Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Phoebe King, and I've just completed an MSc in Climate Change and Environmental Policy at the University of Leeds. For my dissertation research project, I've collaborated with ICAS to investigate the value and impact of the community of practice. Today, I'm presenting a summary of my findings from interviews with community of practice members. Some of you are here today. Thank you so much for your contribution and fantastic responses. So my presentation will be discussing the NFM community of practice, what have we learned? This has been a collaborative research project with my supervisor, Professor Julia Martin-Ortega, and then with Dr. Jenny Armstrong, Dr. Marie Ferre, and Dr. Rosalind. So firstly, I'm going to introduce a little background into the purpose of this research and what I aim to achieve. Then I will highlight the research methods I chose to achieve my aims, and then I will discuss my findings. Lastly, then I will discuss the recommendations for going forward and what this means for the future of the community of practice. Finally, I'll end on some final conclusions, followed by a Q&A session. So, the purpose of my research. Although it appears that NFM is emerging as a more sustainable and integrated alternative to traditional flood management, previous literature argues that natural flood management remains constrained by established norms associated with traditional flood risk management, for example, technical and isolated solutions. Therefore, I was interested in researching the impact of social learning as a tool to support the widespread adoption of NFM interventions. Here, social learning refers to the learning in which individuals obtain through observations of others and their social interactions within a group. The community of practice offered a fantastic opportunity to assess the impact of social learning, as it is a platform for networking, learning, and disseminating best practice. I asked myself, to what extent can a community of practice facilitate social learning and support natural flood management? To answer this, I investigate the presence of social learning following participation in the community of practice, as well as assess the value and impact of the community of practice in relation to NFM activity. So, my research methods. Semi-structured interviews were conducted with members of the Yorkshire NFM community of practice. There were 8 responses, 5 attendees and 3 ICAS employees. I wanted to question both the researchers involved in the delivery as well as those who attended purely as participants to assess whether prior technical knowledge affected the degree of learning. All 8 were questioned on changes in their understanding following the social learning conditions during the community of practice. And then the 5 participants who were non-ICAS were questioned on NFM action since participating in the community of practice workshops. So, how do we evaluate the presence of social learning and the changes it causes to participants' understanding? One way to do it is by using the triple loop learning framework. This study investigated the impact of social learning using the concept of learning loops, where different levels of learning are achieved through individual and group interactions. There are 3 loops in total. The first is single loop learning. This is where incremental adjustments to daily routines and activities are made based on group interactions. Secondly, we have double loop learning. This is where individuals or a group reframe issues and question established norms. For example, the norms associated with traditional flood management, such as quite strict regulatory frameworks. And lastly, triple loop learning, where group interactions instigate a shift in thinking which favours the transformation of regimes. For example, complete adjustment in flood risk management approach towards natural flood management. So, firstly, I'm going to present the evidence of social learning using the triple loop framework I've just described. First, we have single loop learning. All 8 interviewees exhibited an expansion of knowledge of NFM best practices following the community of practice workshops, which is characteristic of single loop learning. This is surface level learning, which supports incremental improvements to daily routines. From interviewing both ICAS and non-ICAS members, I found that there was a difference in the extent of knowledge acquisition, with those with less experience in NFM acquiring more information and putting it to use. However, for many, the COP did not trigger major adjustments to their established NFM routines, indicating that learning remained within a single loop framing. Next, double loop learning. Interacting with a range of organisations and NFM practitioners was found to trigger double loop learning. This was evidenced when participants cited the importance of ground-based facilitators, such as environmental NGOs, farmers, landowners, following their participation in the workshops. Citing these ground-based facilitators as important regulators for NFM indicates that the assumption of who controls flood risk management is shifting from a centralised form of flood governance to a more polycentric approach. For example, there's no longer engineers or scientific elites that dominate the flood management scheme, and new people are considered. However, participants were often reluctant to suggest new NFM facilitators and completely relinquish control from high-level institutions due to the responsibility of delivering flood risk reductions. The new and uncertain evidence base appeared to constrain the full implementation of NFM due to its deliverables being directly compared to those of technical flood solutions. This implies that the embedded flood risk management paradigm persists despite of social learning. Triple loop learning. A shift towards transformative change, which characteristic of triple loop learning, was less evident. This suggests that embedded mentalities are challenging to shift, and further opportunities to support regime change are required. Based on these findings and of the finding of single and double loop learning, I've put forward 3 conditions which I think are important to have at the community of practice. So that's the presence of alternative perspectives brought by a range of NFM representatives to stimulate conversation, high and sustained attendance rates, and low prior technical competencies. Next, I'm moving on to the practical applications of the information acquired during the community of practice workshops. What has been the value of the community of practice determined by the members? Networking. Participants often found that making connections often occurred by chance or on a who-you-know basis, whereas the community of practice helped members meet new people by providing an opportunity to make new connections and expand their current network of NFM practitioners. This instigated spontaneous relationship building beyond the community of practice, offered a range of contacts to seek advice from, and increased access to different demonstration sites. Next, we have learning. So classroom lectures and discussions did instigate the expansion of knowledge base and technical understanding, and as well as site visits helped to develop understanding of NFM on the ground, compare different techniques and understand the impact of interventions. Next, we have information exchange. So it wasn't only one-way learning. Informal group sessions facilitated discussions on common NFM experiences and challenges. Social interactions offered alternative approaches to NFM measures, and the information helped to build confidence among NFM and non-NFM actor networks. We then have project promotion. Many participants found that it was a good opportunity to promote your own work and hear about other organisations' work. This helped to compare different approaches and learn from each other. Then we have access to resources. Originally, accessing resources often were quite challenging, kind of in separate areas, such as online resources, newsletters, or just generally your own contacts providing it to you. Whereas the community of practice offered a collective platform to assess tools, resources, and information all in one place. There was also the opportunity to share resources out to your own network and use the information to secure funding bids and support NFM evidence base. Lastly, we have belonging to a community. This was really important for quite a few participants, as it meant it was access to new networks and access to information, making them feel part of a larger NFM network. So, what has been taken away from the community practice and applied in everyday life? We have practical benefits, such as knowledge. Some participants were found to replicate interventions that they observed at site visits, such as Hardcastle Crags, and then apply them in their own projects. Many applied new tools. So the opportunity mapping tool to assess areas of NFM priority helped some with decision-making processes. Others used the DEFRA GIS layer tool to view nationwide NFM interventions, as well as upload their own data to support the tool. Then we have the wider benefits, just evidence of network expansion and increased connections. And it also appeared that participants really enjoyed using the platform to promote their own project, building NFM awareness. And then we have the impact of information sharing. So in terms of connections made, members were spontaneously invited to visit projects and view NFM demonstration sites after the COP workshops. This supports continuous learning beyond the boundaries of the community of practice. Another example showed that networking provided the opportunity for a university student to help analyse data for an environmental charity, which saved time and project budget, benefiting both the student from a learning perspective and the charity in terms of their resources. The impact of resource sharing was also seen when COP resources were shared to partners, sponsors, farmers and landowners to support funding evidence and provide examples of NFM measures. In some cases, resources were also shared outside of the UK. Lastly, value creation and policy formation. So the community practice also supports value creation, and an example of this would be a participant actually moved positions due to connections made at the community practice to fulfill an NFM role in a new job. Then we have we can see that the community practice also benefited NFM strategies when information learnt from the Outer Shore workshops supported the application of opportunity mapping, which has since been used to develop NFM farm plans. So that's everything that's happened so far. Now looking into the future and what are the opportunities of the group going forward. During the interviews, I asked participants what improvements they felt could be made to help build up the community of practice and ensure it meets as many needs as possible. On the whole, everyone felt that the balance between learning and networking was really great, and there was a lot of positive feedback. As I was undertaking the interviews during an unsettling time of working from home, it's not surprising that many felt a more online presence would be appreciated. Online forums were put forward as a useful platform to post questions, queries, or NFM opportunities out to the group. This would solve accessibility issues and time constraints, yet we mustn't forget the value of the site visits, which was found to offer really great examples, on the ground examples, and help people interact with each other to then implement interventions later. Others felt that a wider set of attendees would be appreciated or would be beneficial. Yet the practicalities of this can be challenging as it increases the number of needs to be met. Again, this could be helped with an online forum, as you could naturally have a larger number of people present, yet some felt that this may lose the sense of community. Lastly, with networking cited as one of the principal values of the community practice, recommendations tended to focus more on the opportunities for this. Some felt that the community practice was more suitable as a networking platform rather than learning, and feel that it would have been beneficial to allocate more time for discussions among groups. However, with the information and the evidence found of all the activities the workshop has helped people to do, we can't really disregard the community practice as a learning platform, as it clearly offers many benefits. So now looking to the future, it'd be good to ask, what do you want from the community practice and what do you think it could offer? I've just put a few questions which I'm going to let you ponder over, and then they can be discussed later on in the breakout rooms. So we've got, what is the COP to you? What would benefit you and your NFM activity? And who would you expect to coordinate the community practice? So yeah, if you just have a little think about those and then we can discuss those later on, that'd be really interesting to hear what you think. I'm just going to end on some final summary points which I've taken from this research into the value and impact of the community practice. Social interactions and learning opportunities provided by the COP did instigate varied levels of learning, predominantly single and double loop learning. The community of practice offers a diverse platform where members can gain NFM assistance in a variety of forms, and the practical benefits and information sharing were the areas in which impact of the community practice was observed the most. Lastly, the results demonstrate that the community practice is a really valuable platform for supporting NFM practitioners and NFM activity. And I really look forward to hearing from everybody here about your views on what the future holds for the community practice. Thank you so much for listening to the summary of my master's dissertation findings. We will now have a short Q&A session before I hand you over to Marie and Emma. If you wouldn't mind pressing the raise hand button if you wish to ask a question, that would be really, really helpful. And thanks again for everyone who was involved in this research, and I really look forward to any questions.